So thanks before everything for having me here at the Yearly conference of one of the major data initiative in Europe. I'm very pleased. Let me, what I wanted to share with you are some thoughts concerning enabling open science practices through EOSC and the fair research data management, that I think it's up to the topic of this conference. So did the slide change?
Yes.
Perfect, fantastic. So everything works. So open science is a policy priority for the European Commission, and the standard methods of working under the EC Research and Innovation Funding Program, notably Horizon Europe. In the context of this conference, I don't have to strengthen the advantages of open science because I think that the floor is well aware of the importance of open science to improve quality, efficiency, and responsiveness of research. The challenge for the Commission within the open science policy is to embrace open science as the modus operandi for all researchers. In its policy, the European Commission sets several objectives that are systemically interlinked. The first two are at the very core of this conference, of view that and of what I think the communities want to achieve with data initiatives. So the FAIR principles and open data sharing for the Commission should become the default for the results of publicly funded scientific research, and research data management should be a practice along the research activities. In this context, I mean, we focus on EOSC as a trusted virtual federated environment that cuts across borders and scientific disciplines. And EOSC should support researchers to store, share, process, and reuse research digital objects that are fair. But because, I mean, we are talking about interlink of objectives, recognition and incentives to adopt open science practices and reforming the research assessments are paramount, accompanied by a new generation metrics are necessary for a systemic change that will support the open science challenge and the digital transition of research process that is more collaborative and with more diverse outputs that are not considered currently in the assessment systems. Another ambition is about the future of scholarly communication. All peer-reviewed scientific publications should be freely accessible, and the early sharing of different kinds of research outputs should be encouraged, including support and implementation of what we call, what the communities call diamond open access publishing and the related infrastructures. Moreover, all publicly funded research in EU should adhere to commonly agreed standards for research integrity, and research results should be reproducible to establish a solid trust in science. All scientists in Europe should also have the necessary skills and support to apply open science research routines and practices. And we should not forget about all the efforts that we can put in making this possible. But last and not least, in a framework of funded research that is more participative and societally driven, supporting citizen engagement and recognizing citizen science initiatives closes the circle of the objectives that are encompassed in the open science policy that European Commission is pushing for. Going back to the first two objectives that I mentioned, as I previously, sorry, I went a bit further. As I previously said, EOSC plays an essential role in this, because EOSC is the enabler of open science practices. I'm certain that EOSC is well known to the audience of this conference, so I'm not spending much words about describing what it is. So, but what I want to strengthen is that EOSC, as a data trusted virtual federated environment, aims at bringing together institutional, national, and European infrastructures such as UDAT to offer access to scientific data and fair data enabling services to all European citizens, researchers. EOSC, let me recall that EOSC is implemented through a European co-program partnership that sees on one side the Horizon Europe supporting the European level developments, and on the other side, the national and institutional initiatives and contributions that complement and will populate the federated environment. Up to now, we have seen Horizon Europe focusing on the EOSC Federation layer, the EOSC core and advanced services development. And the focus was also in fair data services and support to fair adoption and implementation. So EOSC, just to, let's say, pin this point, is essential in bringing fairness of data to the researchers that will benefit of services that are enabling such principles, and also will enable a full research management cycle. The Commission is also supporting the governance of the co-program partnership, and to strengthen the links between the different actions that the Commission wants to push for and pursue in the open science strategy through the EOSC calls. The Commission provided also support to create networks for skills and training. And as I said, staying on the two first topics of my first slide, and repeating that EOSC is an open science enabler, but on a more abstract level, fair research data management is a key priority for making open science the norm. The Commission not only promotes this by the policy, but also wants to lead by example, setting specific open science conditions in Horizon Europe, our research and innovation funding program. In fact, in Horizon Europe, beneficiaries have to make their publications available in open access, and mostly have to make, and most interesting for this conference, they have to make their data as open as possible and as close as necessary. And specifically, it requires research data to be fair and open by default. Of course, with certain exception, but the fairness of data is a key element that cuts across the entire funding program. Support to fair data management adoption is not only by showing it, but also providing grants to that aim. For example, we have specific calls in the WIDERA part of the Horizon Europe program. WIDERA stands for Widening Participation and Strengthening the European Research Area, but also within the Destination Infra EOSC of the Research Infrastructure Work Program. And it's in this destination that we recently awarded projects like Fair Impact and Fair Core for EOSC that are examples of the tangible support that EC wants to give through the EOSC calls. In the next research infrastructure work program, there will also be interest on fair RDM subjects and on notably tackling aspects of data preservation and trying to establish a network of trustworthy repository capable of implementing also a peer support, a mutual support to enhance and let's say level the fair enabling services and also research data management practices. So what you can see is that the Commission tries to work together with the stakeholders, establishing on one side networks, on the other side, let's say, pursuing the development of EOSC with national and institutional counterparts. So conferences like this are key to showcase what has been done and what we could achieve in the close future. So with this last note, I want to conclude and to thank you and wish you a profitable continuation of this conference.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction and also for the invite. I'm very happy to be here today, not only because I managed to escape the chilly Finnish weather, but also because the UDAT community is really like a big family. And I'm amazed every time I'm in this conferences to see the long-lasting collaborations that the UDAT partners have established. And I think that this is one of the success factors of UDAT. And indeed, collaboration is not just a success factor for UDAT, but also for the entire EOSC. And that's the message that I want to bring to this audience today on behalf of the EOSC Association. So EOSC is a joint effort, and we will succeed only if we do this together. But let's go a bit in the details. So Christian didn't mention what EOSC is about, so I will try to say something about this and why is UDAT relevant to EOSC and vice versa. So EOSC aims to establish this web of fair data and services, a federation of relevant data sources, and a virtual space where researchers and providers can work together to boost open science. Do these words sound familiar to UDAT? I believe so. So I believe that UDAT and EOSC share the same long-term objectives. Maybe the implementation views are slightly different, or the details might be not exactly the same, but the long-term vision is exactly the same one. And that's why it's very important for EOSC that UDAT keeps contributing to EOSC, keeps to be engaged to speed up the EOSC development. And speaking of development of EOSC, so what do we need to achieve? We need to populate EOSC with the relevant data, rich metadata, search mechanism, but also software, compute power, storage, and so on. And all these requirements have been captured in the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda, what we call the SRIA, which is really the strategic document for EOSC. Now we are in the phase, the EOSC Association, where we are almost ready to release the final version of the appendix of the SRIA, what we call the multi-annual roadmap, which is the annex to the SRIA setting the priorities for the next 2 years, 23-24. And all the members of the EOSC Association will receive the final version of this roadmap in the next weeks for their endorsement. How are we planning to evolve the SRIA? So in the EOSC Association, there is board of directors, and now we have started a series of strategy workshops. With these strategy workshops, we are trying to discuss and better elaborate the EOSC vision in a way that we can communicate this to the community in a more tangible and concrete way. So that's what we are doing from the board of directors perspective. Of course, we are not alone in this effort. So the strategic vision is also complemented by the work of all the volunteers that have agreed to participate and support the IOSC Association task forces. So there are 13 groups focusing on different topics that are part of the priorities of the SRIA. And these groups are working on recommendation and future directions for IOSC that then will be incorporated in the future editions of the SRIA. And now we will have this autumn the first results, both from the work of the directors, but also from the task forces. If instead we talk about IOSC implementation, so what's the status? So far, the IOSC implementation has been managed by the Horizon 2020 projects. What's happening in the near future? So I'm pretty sure that many of you are aware, I can move the slide, of the IOSC procurement action that is coming up this month. So this month, the final text of the tender should be released. This procurement action is meant to procure the basic functionalities to enable the IOSC Federation, what is called the IOSC Core. But this procurement action, so an innovative procurement instrument or funding instrument for the IOSC implementation, will be still coupled and will work together with a series of projects. The projects that are coming from the Infra IOSC course 21-22. On this slide, you just see the list of projects that have been awarded for the Infra IOSC 2021. So what's different compared to the past? Indeed, we have the procurement as a new instrument, but still we have the granting scheme. Well, the main difference is that now in the landscape, there is a governance and there is also a IOSC association. And what's the role of the IOSC association in the implementation? Well, the IOSC association will try to support the projects and the other development initiatives, improving cross-project coordination, exchange of information with the primary scope of avoiding overlaps and repetition of work, will facilitate the sustainability and exploitation of the outcomes of the projects. So if we are able to work with the big picture in mind, maybe we are also able to fit the results of the project in the big picture and make them sustainable in the future. And will maximize the impact of engagement actions. So in the past, all the different projects had different engagement plans, reaching out multiple times to the same communities. Probably, if we work together in a coordinated manner on this, we will achieve a better impact. And also importantly, we will try to harmonize the communication about IOSC. I know that still the communication about IOSC is a bit unclear. So that's what we are really trying to work on. The IOSC Association will be supported by a coordination and support action called IOSC Focus, which is indeed one of the projects that has been awarded in the Infra IOSC Call 2021. What the association has been doing in this month, so the IOSC Association is a pretty new legal entity, so it was established only last year. So in addition to staffing the proper association, also the past months have been dedicated to start setting up processes and workflows. So the tangible results were some work on the new branding of IOSC. There is a new workspace for the task forces and also for the projects that will be launched. There is the onboarding going on at the moment in this IOSC forum. And all of this is to set and prepare the foundation to work together and to try to coordinate activities. Of course, the implementation of IOSC is not just coming from the EC funded initiatives. As Christian was mentioning before, so IOSC is a co-program partnership, meaning that I cannot change the slide. Why? Sorry. Okay. So IOSC is a co-program partnership. And what does it mean? It means that in the context of the co-program partnership, that there are two actors. One actor is the European Commission that has committed to sustain IOSC with some funding. The other actor is the EOSC Association, meaning the community, meaning the institutional contributions. So the implementation of EOSC is not just up to the project, but it's really also up to all your organizations and all the activities that you are performing at your organizations. And that's why the EOSC Association is trying to monitor the type of activities that are happening outside the EC-funded initiatives through this additional activities plan survey. You have probably received the survey this week. The deadline for completion is the 2nd of October. And really the purpose of the survey is to capture all the different types of activities that you are doing that are relevant for EOSC. From additional research and innovation activities, training skills, work on fair activities that Christian was mentioning before. I mentioned the co-program partnership, and the only thing I want to remark here is that in addition to the EOSC Association and the European Commission, there is a third actor that is very important, which are the member states. So the member states are working in the context of the EOSC Steering Board together with the EOSC Association and the European Commission. So the country perspective and commitment is really important. And I'm showing to you on this slide, the member states have been asked to express their commitment to the 20 European Research Agenda policy actions. EOSC is the policy priority number 1. So what you see on the first column with the number 1, that's EOSC. And you can see all the countries that have expressed a written commitment to EOSC, more than 20. And this is really a positive news for EOSC. At country level, in order to better engage all the actors at national level, the EOSC Association has launched a sort of roadshows around the member states and associated countries, where we are trying to organize what we call tripartite events. What's the purpose of these tripartite events? The tripartite events are organized by the country. And when I say the country, it could be the ministerial representatives working in the steering group, or for example, the mandated organization in the EOSC Association, the members of the EOSC Association, the national structures that are trying to coordinate the EOSC effort at national level. And based on the needs that they have, they shape the agenda of the meeting. And the agenda of the meeting could be around engaging more policymakers, or maybe engage research communities, discuss infrastructure development. And this is really up to the country, because the countries are different, the needs are different, and EOSC is a big initiative. So the European Commission and the Association have committed to go to and participate to all these events with the purpose to help the countries to raise EOSC high in the agenda, in the national agenda. And I just wanted to flag that in Greece, for example, there will be a national tripartite event on the 6th of October. Speaking of events, this is my last slide. I just want to remind you that there is the EOSC Symposium. This is the EOSC flagship annual event taking place in Prague this year from 14-17 of November. It's officially part of the European presidency agenda. And it's organized by the EOSC tripartite collaboration, so the European Commission, DG Connect, DG RTD, the EOSC Steering Board, the EOSC Association, in collaboration with the EOSC Future project. There is a website, so you will have the slides after this event, and I really ask you to check out the website, because there you can find all the information. We have already a venue, and there are also already some information, practical information about accommodation. So if you're planning to come to Prague, you can check it out. The program is around 4 days, and really we have different topics that we are discussing, from the more political and strategic ones to the topics more related to the implementation. The program committee is developing a main plenary agenda, and just to give you an idea, the topics that we have on that agenda are about the minimum viable EOSC development and future sustainability, interoperability in the broader sense, interdisciplinary and cross-disciplinary collaboration, the national commitment from the countries, so we will have country representatives there, but also contribution from organizations. And that's why I just want to close this talk with reminding you that the pre-registration is open, and we have launched a call for talks and sessions, and we really invite everyone with a relevant contribution to participate and become part of the program. And that closes my presentation. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good continuation of the meeting.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, Rob. Yes, thanks for the introduction. Happy to be here and be able to join you in an EUDAT conference after a long pause. So in this talk, I will give you some updates of the current activities of EUDAT and also mention and highlight some of the topics that we are going to discuss in this conference. But I will start from the basics. So what is EUDAT? EUDAT collaborative data infrastructure. It is one of the major e-infrastructures in Europe that has the target and mission to support research in Europe across countries. And we have currently in the EUDAT CDI 27 member centers coming from 16 different countries. And picture is not showing very well. Oh, it's better. Yes, and these 27 partners are coming together and they are working on research data services and research data policies together. And they have joined to develop and provide a set of services that are aimed for different, let's say, challenges of the research data life cycle. And together we are working towards our vision, which is that data must be shared and preserved across borders and disciplines. Just a little bit about the background or the history of EUDAT. So the start of EUDAT collaboration happened more than 10 years ago. In 2009, there was the first consortium that suggested this idea of pan-European data infrastructure for the European Commission. Well, the first proposal was not successful, but then in 2011, the first EUDAT project started. And then about the same time, this very influential report came up, highlighting, well, riding the wave report from European Commission high-level expert group, highlighting the need for large-scale data services to take care. I mean, the amount of digital data available for research started to be too much for individual researchers to take care of. And then there is a need for large-scale solutions. So it was about the same time that the EUDAT started. Then, okay, then there was a second EUDAT project, and already during that time, there was a strong push for making EUDAT permanent collaboration, not depending on projects. And this took place in 2016-17 when the CDI agreement was prepared and signed. Since that, we have participated in different projects. There was a milestone of establishing the EUDAT limited company to be able to legally represent the EUDAT in collaborations or in contracts when needs arise. I also want to say something about research data management and the importance of that, although this has already been mentioned by the previous speakers, so not going to spend much time on that. So we want to advance and support good research data management, and this involves several areas, including data policies, skills, support, services, and infrastructure. And clearly, where EUDAT has its strongest point is on services and infrastructure, but we of course are contributing to the other development in Europe as well. Regarding the infrastructure and services, EUDAT is operating a portfolio of so-called P2 services, which indeed then support researchers in different phases of the research data lifecycle. These services are modular in a sense that one can use single service and take benefits from that, or taking to use a combination of these. So the services are interoperable. They are integrated in many ways so that data or metadata or identifiers and so on can flow between those different services. There will be much more talk about the services in the coming sessions, so I will not go into any more details on that. The EUDAT services are generic data management services. So we are providing solutions for all science disciplines. And so, of course, it is possible to do adjustments or tailoring or add features that are specific for some community to support specific use cases. But for example, as you see from this slide that is taken from the EUDAT.eu website, we are truly supporting a large variety of use cases with these services. So they are not discipline specific, they are generic services. Some of these use cases presented at the website are recent ones, some are a bit older ones, but anyway, you can see the variety from this collection. Also, I'm sure we will hear a lot of interesting presentations during these 2 days and also at the exhibition and poster session about more recent use cases and new innovative ways to use the EUDAT services. I want to spend also some time to explain how in practice the EUDAT services can be used, because there are different strategies for different scenarios and different user groups. As I said, these are modular or versatile services so that they can cover very wide set of needs and use cases. If we start from, for example, from a single researcher, some services are just self-registration services. Any researcher, basically anyone, can go and register for example, to B2Drop and upload files and folders and share those with colleagues and friends through links. Then if you go into let's say a team of people or small projects, maybe then the researchers already want to, for example, publish something, form a data set out of the individual files, add some metadata, and then present this or share this available for the wider research community. And then make it, let's say, more fair for others, so findable and then if you think of a research community, which can be actually a large collection of people from different organizations and different countries, it's possible then to use the more advanced features of EUDAT services or store very large amounts of data in the B2Safe service and so on. And possibly taking advantage of the APIs, the interfaces that the services offer, and automate some of the data uploads. And if I elaborate a bit more on then from more of an organizational point of view, because also organizations can easily be customers and collaborators of EUDAT. I would say that the main stakeholders there are research performing organizations and service provider organizations. For research performing organizations, we can offer contracts and then provide some of these solutions under a defined service level and really a contract. and then also add some possibility for tailoring, extending metadata schemas or integrating to some other tools, large storage capacity, and additional features. This is possible through the EU.ltd service contract. For service providers, the software behind the B2 services is generally open source. Anyone can take it and start building their own service based on that. Perhaps then, anyway, in this case, it can be more useful to consider joining the collaborative data infrastructure. So it's really possible to join. It's not a closed club. Everyone who shares the vision and wants to contribute is invited to join. So being part of the CDI memberships then gives access to the European network of experts who already have long experience on setting up these services, even joining some of the development efforts or other voluntary teams on support or documentation, or in general to contribute to the EU vision on technological level and policy level. So those are the main opportunities or areas for organizations. Then I want to move into the European landscape and the wider view of how EU fits into the big picture. And we have heard very good talks on this already from the European Commission and from the host country and from IOSC Association. And from my part, I can also say that EU supports the vision of the European Open Science Cloud. And as you heard from the previous presentation, the visions are very closely aligned between EU and IOSC. We are also very much involved in the construction, designing, implementation of IOSC. So it's not only talk, but we really are working for IOSC as well. EUDAT is a member of the IOSC Association. We contribute to the IOSC Association task forces that are implementing IOSC. And EUDAT has been a key contributor to several the core IOSC related projects. Currently, those projects are the IOSC Future, and then also the DICE project, which is about providing data infrastructure capacity for IOSC users. I also want to mention that with regards to the upcoming IOSC procurement, EUDAT is very much interested in analyzing this opportunity and, if possible, try to make a bid there to continue this commitment to IOSC. So the DICE project I mentioned has 24 partners, of which most are from the EUDAT membership. And this project is really providing content in IOSC. It provides those services that people hopefully are looking for when they go to the IOSC website. We have 19 service provider partners in this project who are providing access to their high quality data services under EU funding. Most of those service providers are EUDAT providers, but we also have others who are complementing the selection available for users. And this figure, I don't know if you can see the numbers really, but it shows that the amount of allocations and the amount of users we are able to serve in the DICE project is growing and with a quite rapid pace. So the number of users we have supported during the first 15 months of the DICE project is more than 1,500. But that includes individual researchers and also, or either they belong into a project, and here we have more than 80 projects served, which are representing more 15 different science communities. And as you see from the map, also the requests are coming all over Europe. So it's working as expected in a way that we are not supporting only the local users, but really it's a European coverage. I want to also say something about computing. So it's not only EOS and data management. We see that collaboration is needed and where EUDAC can and will wants to contribute in the European landscape. So in looking at the high-end or high-performance computing community, it's quite easy to see that data management, such as the EUDAC services, and then the computing can support each other. So typically in data-intensive computing, one can store a lot of data at the computing side, but that's only for the duration of the computing project. And then after the project, the researcher very often, I'm sure, wants to keep and store the data for longer term to be able to do some post-processing and further analysis, publish data sets and so on. And that, I think, EUDAC services is one possibility. At least I think it's an ideal possibility for that community. So we are working on this. It's in early stages. I still want to show a schematic map how this could work. So in this picture, it's trying to show that the data systems and computing systems can be located in different locations. There must be easy way to upload data from the data storage to computing, move between computing sites, and then on the other hand, get the computing results again into a data management service, possibly publish research output. So even though we don't have a concrete collaboration going on with this, we still have very good links to these high-end computing initiatives. For example, many of those high-end computing systems are hosted at the same sites as who are EUDAC members as well. For example, as we heard from the opening talks, GRNet is one of those examples. Okay, I would like to conclude by showing you a video, short video, if I can get it to work. It should start. This, I suppose. Yes. Enjoy. Yes, and if you want to see more of such videos, high quality entertainment, you can go to the EUDAC YouTube channel. There are very good videos there. So with this, I want to still bid you a warm welcome to this conference. As I said in the beginning, it's a great honor to be here. Great to see so many of you here on location and also remotely. And I'm looking forward to the interesting discussion and fruitful collaborations of this conference. So welcome also from my department. Thank you.
Can you do a sound check for me?
Yes, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, great. So I need to wear my glasses. So hello, everybody. Nice to have you here in Athens, and very happy to participate in this EUDAT meeting and to present you the outcomes of our landscaping survey and what we have collected as information about the gaps in relation to ORDM, we call it Open Research Data Management. So I will talk about the work that we have done in the NIFOS Euro project that I believe you know this by now. It's one of the regional infra-EOSC projects. So one of the projects that supports the regional development and inclusion in EOSC. So the landscaping activity in NIFOS, I have to say it right from the beginning, has not been a one-off activity. It has been an almost continuous one for about 2 years. And we collected input in various rounds, as you can see here. And also we collected input through various means. It means that we had, first of all, this landscaping survey, which was a coordinated effort with other infra-EOSC projects. But in addition to this, we ran experts interviews. A couple of months after this, we had structured questionnaires in 2021. On the occasion also of the EOSC landscaping survey, it was the collaboration with Sarah here. And also we have regular structured reports within the NIFOS project in relation to the NOSCIS development, the National Open Science Cloud initiatives built in the 15 countries that are part of the NIFOS Europe Consortium. And it's one of our major tools for supporting and working also on issues related to FAIR and ORDM in our region. So the landscaping in numbers, it was a big effort for our region. Actually, it has been, I believe, the first time that this attempt was made to capture this information in such a broad way. And we have in our landscaping survey information about almost 1,200 stakeholders from the region. So it was the first time that information about such a number of stakeholders has been collected. And we also had more than 60 experts interviews. So the overview of challenges, trying to cluster them, you will see that what we got as answers includes pretty much everything. So we have challenges related to technical aspects, related to stakeholder engagement and stakeholder roles, challenges related to training, and of course, region-specific challenges and national-specific challenges. I have to say this, that we had also the discussion previously. Our area is really an area that differs and it really differs from other regions in Europe. So let me start with these challenges, with the area-specific challenges. We had to work knowing that there is a huge diversity in the levels of maturity, open science maturity, as it was reflected also in the existing policies or the understanding about policies. In the educational and science policies, and in the availability of research infrastructures. And that was one of the reasons why we also focused in this initial survey, but also in all our activities afterwards, in collecting information about this, and also to see how we can overcome this fragmentation and how we can work towards a collaboration, a better collaboration in the area. It's an area that has a political instability, maybe higher political instability as in other regions in Europe. And this affects the way that open science policies are introduced and are implemented. And also it's an area that has witnessed in the not in the long past, but only a couple of years ago, military conflicts, for example. And these military conflicts of the 90s affected also the regional and the science collaboration in the region. We have a huge diversity, language diversity, it's not only a matter of understanding each other. We have English for understanding each other, but also it creates a number of interoperability issues, also technical issues. And also the R&D funding is lower than the EU average. And also there are differences in the R&D funding also inside this very same region between the countries that are EU members and the countries that are associated. So it was for us, for a better understanding, EOSC is the frame where we do our work, and it's our main aim to increase EOSC inclusion. So we wanted to understand the familiarity with EOSC. And there you can see that these are the questions, these are the replies, now almost 3 years ago. There you will see that the familiarity with EOSC when we started our work has not been very high. So the answers, not familiar at all and not very familiar, are a big portion of the answers, of the total answers. And what was really important for us, because this also steered all our activities in the years that followed and in the months that followed, was that if you check the profiles, the stakeholder profiles who answered this, the category creators, we have created these stakeholder profiles and asked different questions to each stakeholder profiles based also on the interests they have and the background each of the one have, creator, facilitators, funder, consumer, and supporter for open research data management services and for EOSC related services. So the first category, the creators, have been the ones who told us that are less familiar with EOSC in comparison, for example, to the supporters, who are the category who has the biggest familiarity with EOSC. This was a very important insight for us in order to understand how we should develop our offer as an EFOS Euro project in order to close this gap. And if you see also the familiarity with FAIR, the situation has been more or less the similar. Again, these are the data that we collected in autumn 2019. And we also asked about open science policies, and we asked institutions the availability and the existence of open science policies, not in general, but in relation to the three major research outputs: publications, research data, and software. And again, what the participants told us is that we see a picture here that is really gives the impression that our region is split in two. There are countries where there are only few policies in relation to open research data management and FAIR. And there are other countries that said that we have established institutional policies and they work. So, and actually comparing these results with the interviews with the experts some months after this, the figures in some cases are even lower. So I don't know if you can see the slide, or it's too small. Based on this, we also asked what are the training areas, the ORDM and FAIR training areas, they get institutional support. And here we see that actually the only area that is pretty well covered is the area related to IPR. The other area, and the second one, is the repositories. But even the repositories have an answer of less than 40%. The other areas are offered as training or support, institutional support to ORDM, but it's not a really established support. And the second question, or a follow-up question, has been what are the things that you need? What are the training gaps and the needs you have identified? What would you like to have more in ORDM and FAIR? And here we see the first answer is that we need more people, more trained people on ORDM and FAIR. So people who are in the position to train even more people, and we interpret this as an answer that we need to build capacity, a better capacity and a higher capacity in the region. All other answers are also important. Aspects related to fair data stewardship, for example, and software stewardship, or the sharing aspects. All these have been identified as important aspects where the researchers from our region would like to have more support. Another gap or another challenge, actually, I would say, not gap, it's not correct to talk about gaps, is the integration we have with European Open Science Network. We also asked in our surveys and also in all our follow-up interviews and surveys, the participation in other open science network. You see here the networks we had mentioned, and there is a clear difference between the EU countries and the non-EU countries. The participation in open science networks with everything that comes together with this, and it's not only about meeting other people and talking with other people and the general collaboration, but it's also the support you can get and the input you can get, the exchange you can have with them is much higher in the EU countries, in the NIFOS Europe EU countries, than in others. And maybe this also explains, this also results in bigger problems in these countries, let's call it bigger problems, in relation to ORDM and FAIR, in the sense that not working directly in other and collaborating with other open science network may result in infrastructures that are not up to date as they should, or you invest in things that do not necessarily work in a European or in a broader context. So the uneven infrastructure development has been also something that we have collected as input through our this landscaping activity. And for example, of course, there is a different level of easiness to access to infrastructure, as I showed also in my previous slide. Sorry. It's the air conditioning. Between the EU members and the associated countries. And we saw also a difference in the development. We asked for, oh, sorry, can I have some water? Sorry. I'll wrap up in 3.
Yeah, okay.
So to give you 2 examples, the examples of the registries and the example of the repositories, when we started this work, we couldn't find really curated national or regional registries about stakeholders, open science stakeholders. And same also with the repositories. Sorry, I'm sorry. Was a number of the repositories. The number of the repositories is an issue, but I'm very close to the closing of the presentation, luckily for you. And for me as well, yeah. So for example, we had to run a validator check, the open air validator check, in order to check the metadata and to see that all metadata fields are compliant, in order to facilitate the onboarding process of repositories in our area. So I don't want to close with a negative view, or that in our area we have only challenges. I have to say that these are challenges, but there are efforts, ongoing efforts in our area for 20 years now. This has been also mentioned in the beginning today. So there is the grid and infrastructure collaboration operating now for 20 years in our region. It's the open air network and service. Actually, these are the two groups of people, the two groups of stakeholders that constitute the NIFOS Europe project. And based on this previous experience and everything that we have collected, we are also in the position to make a very broad offer to our region, to offer tools, to offer training, to offer onboarding process and a service catalog for our region that really brings all our region up to speed with the EOSC services and makes available services from Southeast Europe available to the whole European community, and also the network of the National Open Science Cloud initiatives that we believe it will be a network that will help the sustainability not only of EOSC in the region, but it's a group of people, of researchers, of open science stakeholders that work in their country on ORDM issues, either in a horizontal way or also in a thematic way. And my very last slide, we organize our conference, our regional event in Budapest at the end of this month. So you are all very much welcome to join us. There you can hear many more things about what we do in ORDM and the NIFOS Europe use cases and the outcomes of the open call we run. And we'll be happy to see you also in Budapest. Thank you very much. And apologies for my voice.
Thank you, Eleni. So thanks, Antti, for the introduction. I'm very happy to give this, I try to be short presentation about how the UDIT services can support the challenges and the gaps that Eleni just presented, and even a few more maybe. So first of all, a summary of the challenges that UDIT sees as for research data management. So first of all, the first one is something that Eleni already mentioned, which is the different level of maturity the different communities and countries have on data management solution and research data management in general. So discussing with community can be complex and very different from one to another. And also research communities are very differently organized by themselves. So there are different structure, different organization you should discuss too. The other important point that Antti also mentioned before in his presentation is that it's very difficult to decouple data services from computing. So these are two things that normally should go very well together, but they are managed and they behave very differently from one to another. So the connection between these two words that should be easy is yet not so easy. And obviously we have specific requirements for the data management in terms, most of all, of long-term sustainability and long-term preservation of data, which is very connected to research data management more than any other domain. So I will not go into a lot of detail because Antti already very well presented what is UDIT about, but I will just focus here on the main vision in relation to research data management, which is that the aim is to have data shared and preserved across border and domains, scientific domains. So the aim of UDIT is to provide a set of services, so building blocks that each community can put together to solve the specific needs and requirements in terms of data management for the specific community. So this is just a very generic summary of a normal, I would say, standard research data life cycle. So we start for creating the data, we process the data, we analyze the data, then we want to preserve those data or part of those data, then we want to give access to part of this data to other peers or colleagues. And then the final data, we would like to make them reusable, so findable and shareable with the public domain. If we look at what UDAT offers, we basically cover half of this life cycle. Obviously, we are not dealing with processing, as I said, our analysis of the data, but all the steps related to the data management of the life cycle are covered by UDAT services. So if we look at the let's see, data services types that we can identify in the standard representation of the pyramid from the private data up to the public data that is quite common in our domain. The UDAT services would cover the central part mainly of this pyramid. Services like personal and project workspaces, so where it's meant for mid-stand storage and sharing across peers during the processing of data, so active data management. Then we have data archives, and more importantly, policy-based data archives, which are longer term, where you can associate, for example, PAD or add specific policies for replication and other dedicated features to the archive. Then we have repository like B2Share to publish sharing your data in a fair way, add PADs like B2Handle, and then look for data across community with B2Find. So I will not, all these services are meant to support the FAIR principle and help researchers and communities to make the FAIR principles guidelines. So to make them fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And each of the UDAT services might help one or more of this step, of this principle to be achieved by communities. I'm not going into any further details of the UDAT services because there will be a session immediately after lunch that will give detailed presentation of most of these services. So I will save time now on this, but if you're interested, then next session will give you more details on that. So this was also quickly mentioned by Yanti. So the type of access to the UDAT services can be very different. So we have single researchers or single scientists that might make use of one specific server, even more than one, in like just getting to the service and make use of it. Then we have communities or data manager that might want to work for their set up for their community set of services normally, or even one in a different way. Or obviously, as I said, we have very diversity and variety of needs and requirements. So also customized solution can be built and developed. And as I said before, the UDAT services are designed to be not tailored to a specific scientific domain. So any scientific domain in principle can make use of the service that has been developed and designed to try to be as generic as possible. However, we have many use cases, as Antti was showing from our website. I'm just reporting here one example just to give you an idea. This is coming from the ICOS community, which is trying to extend their benchmarking environment. So the idea is to replicate and move data close to the computing facilities of different sites, and then also enlarge their publication side of the services beyond their own portal by adding PIDs and then sharing it with B2Share to the more generic public. As I said, this is just an example. We have many that make use of the services in different ways. Also, there is tomorrow a data management use case session where you can hear more about different ways communities have used the services that we operate. And that, I think, was my presentation.
So good morning. Thank you for introduction. I am here as a representative of the European project CS3 Mesh for EWOSC, and I would like to tell you a bit about the stuff that we are doing and the challenges we try to address and how are we doing with the research data management. So the specific RDM gaps being covered within the project is that we want to solve how to share the data or collaboratively edit some documents between independently operated sync and share systems. Sync and share systems can be here represented as OnCloud, NextCloud, or C-File, or any other sync and share system, while keeping reasonable access control performed by users. A common example is that we have researcher from Czech Republic. This researcher is as a hosted researcher, for instance, in CERN, and he would like to get the data from his colleagues from CERN, and he want to do some calculation or something like that. Currently is possible only via creating a public link or with the share secret, but this is something which is not so much handy and also could lead to some leak of the data and so on. The science mesh itself is trying to address the sharing of the data and the resources from one sync and share system to another. So we are not the vendor specific project. We're trying to support wide scope of the sync and share systems, and this leads to the building of the infrastructure, which can allow the management and to be scalable, so we can admit new communities, new sync and share systems, solutions, and so on. We also trying to provide user and service discovery for the end users, because this is the key point of the federation. So we need to allow the services and the users to be discovered within the federation. And the key point in here is that we design all the systems based on the existing AI systems residing in the end of the sync and share system. So we do not rely on the centralized AI across the partners. So what is the science mesh? Science mesh is federated infrastructure enabling the application and data sharing across various types of the systems. Here in the project is represented by OnCloud, NextCloud, and C-File. Of course, this project is also considering other solutions or systems to be joined. So this is all about the implementation of the standards. So we are also having some negotiation with other partners. Before the mesh, we had an API which is called Open Cloud Mesh. However, this OCM protocol is allowing the users to share the data only on the peer-to-peer basis, which is not very scalable, and it also requires for the users to know the target identities where you want to share, which sometimes for our users is even hard for them to understand where actually they have their own data, what is the systems where their data resides, and so on. So for this purpose, we built the federation of independently operated sync and share systems, and this federated infrastructure is inspired from any kind of other infrastructure. So we have the science mesh metadata, including services, monitoring, accounting, policy enforcing, and governance. As I mentioned, the sync and share systems serve as the source of user identities, so the user data still resides on the target systems, never leave the systems itself, and are not pushed to some central databases and so on. For this type of the federated infrastructure, we implement so-called invitation workflow, which is used for user discovery. So users can invite the colleagues to share resources regardless what system they use. So you can imagine that you will, based on your, let's say, email or kit number or chat or via any other way, you will receive the invitation, where you will see who is inviting you to share data, where you will see the originator system and so on. So you can agree with the sharing data, and the API will do all the magic business behind, and you will establish the share. The resources which can be shared are file, folders, collaborative applications, any kind of other applications developed for specific purposes of the scientists, or data transfers. So to summarize, what the science mesh itself can provide, we provide easy data sharing between users from different sync and share systems from various vendors. You can also share the applications like Jupyter notebooks, Office applications, and much more. Collaborative tools, collaborative editing. We also support on-demand data transfers for large data sets. This is related to HPC computing, where you typically want to get your data as close as possible to the HPC cluster to process them. Data repositories with FAIR principles. And currently we also work for the, we want to become a lightweight identity provider for other communities for the selected services, currently with cooperation with EGI. So that's all from my side.
So thank you very much. It's good to see everybody, as I think Sarah said, seeing everybody after such a long break. EUDAT is a big family, and it just coming here reinforces that. Now, because of Brexit, I feel more like the black sheep of the family, but some probably within the EUDAT would say I always was. So what I'm going to talk about is a project which is recently finished. So I work in the fusion community. So nuclear fusion is about colliding hydrogen atoms to generate energy, and it's supposed to be a really good method of generating clean energy in the future. One thing that I will say in this is the project is specifically fair for fusion. We looked at open data, but we're so far away from that. I don't think we've made some recommendations on that, which I'll come to. The other thing I would say, and this goes back to the whole point of this topic, in terms of research data management, fusion is actually quite mature. So JET, which is the oldest fusion device, it's been running for 40 years, you can still access the first shot. So where's the problem with the research data management? There isn't really that much of an issue. The other thing regarding open data, there are five major tokamak devices, six major tokamak devices now in Europe. 2 are in the UK, 2 are in Germany, 1 is in Switzerland, and 1 is in 2 in UK, 2 in Germany, and 1 in France. Nearly 2 in France once ITER comes online. Of those tokamak devices, only 2 are mandated to have open data. And those devices are the UK national device and the Swiss national device, which is interesting because they're the 2 countries that are sort of peripheral to Europe. So I find that quite interesting. So I've got a lot of the usual blurb that you have to go through. Fair for Fusion, these are the partners, some of the background where we have a lot of political input from various sources, primarily the ones you see there. Eurofusion, which is a Horizon 2020 co-funded project with national research institutes. ITER, which you may have heard of, it's the next big generation tokamak that's being built in the south of France, and the International Atomic Energy Authority. And I would say that the funding for this project didn't come directly from the Commission, well, not from DG Connect or DG RTD, but it came from DG Energy through the IAEA. So it didn't come from the Eurofusion project. And the fact that Eurofusion itself isn't a legal entity actually caused us a lot of problems during the project, particularly when it comes to assigning persistent identifiers. We would love to have Eurofusion persistent identifiers on the data, but we don't have a legal entity that is authorized to sign for it. So each site, well, particularly the UK and Switzerland, are minting their own DOIs for their data. It would be nice to have a more collaborative feel for the community. So there's several things we did very early on in the sort of pre-EOSC days to try and evaluate whether research data management and the computing services that are provided through EOSC would be good for us. So we did some pilot services with B2 Share and B2 Find. At the time, we don't think they were applicable. However, I'm now revisiting that because at the time we were looking really at the experimental data, and the experimental data doesn't really fit into the services that are provided. The simulation and modeling data, which I'm now starting to look at, may fit in better, and we may try and run some pilot use cases on that. We also, as a community, do not have a common AAI platform. It goes back to what the previous speaker was saying. If you want access to data at a particular site, you need to fly over to that site, sign a form, get an account, fly back, and then maybe you can access the data. It's not terribly efficient, but that's the way it is at the moment. There is an agreement at the Eurofusion level that they will fund the implementation of a common AAI solution. That will be run by PSNC, and that's almost as direct output of this project. Okay. Now this is one of the slides that I find most useful when talking about EOSC, because it shows everything nice and graphically. What I'm trying to do in this slide is show you where we are at the moment on the left and where we hoped we would get to on the right. I'm not saying we got to there, but you can see that in terms of fairness, we weren't very good. So I will say that I used the Fuji tool, which came out of another European project. Can you remember which one? Yep, Fuji. Fair is fair. Yeah, fair is fair. So we used that. And initially we came out with a 0 because we didn't have a means of the tool being able to access our data. Once we put a identifier on it, a DOI, it came out as 7. I don't know how that really relates to this diagram because I don't know how they're doing that evaluation, but to me, I was surprised we were that good. So this is again more about the project. Fair for Fusion was really a CSA call. So it wasn't designed to provide a service. It was designed to provide a demonstrator that shows what a service could do. Now, part of that was looking at the FAIR components, and doing 2 different evaluators. So a technology evaluator where we were looking at really novel techniques on how you could look for instance, similarity between data sets across different tokamaks. And a bunch of component development, but the biggest output was a blueprint architecture for a fully functional service. But you can see there's lots of interactions between all the work packages, and key was we actually interacted with a whole number of external organizations. The European Open Science Cloud, IRA Forum, Eurofusion, the RDA, ITER, you can see them all there. So there was a lot of interaction with them, a lot of pushback in some cases against what we were doing or against what we were being allowed to do. So I'm going to quickly, I haven't got many of the demonstrators up online, but one of the key things that came out of this was how do we justify the funding? I would say that talking to the scientists and the users of the data, they are really, really keen. They see a massive need for this. They think it will save them time. They think it will save them energy. It means that you don't have to train up on 5 different systems to find your data and access your data. or even more if you have to go out to the US or Korea or China or Japan. Something like this is really, really key for the users. For the funders, it's a different thing. The funders don't see the benefit. They want to see what it's going to cost and how much cost reduction it can bring. Because there is a big worry from the funders that if we make the data more accessible just to the community, not even to the general public, if we just make it more accessible to the community, there will be a lot more support calls. I would argue that that's because we haven't documented how we've generated the data or how we should use the data well enough. But that's not how the funders see it. So there's a very close group of people who know how to use a particular data set, and they will be the only ones looking at it. So there isn't this sort of wide community use of different data sets. An example that I give of where it would be a benefit was Eurofusion spent 2 years and I think about 5 million euros developing something that's called the disruption database. Disruption is when a tokamak reactor goes unstable and hits the wall. And these are really important things to know about. It took them that long because the users had to understand how each site defined a disruption. They needed to define how to access the data. They needed to work out how to map the data between the different sites. Having a tool like this would have cut the effort probably by 75%. So there, for me, is one of the major use cases of the demonstrators. And because of that, Eurofusion have agreed in the next funding round to start to allow us to develop this into a service. I say start to, so we had to put together 4 funding options from a minimal fair solution to something which was all encompassing. And they've agreed to fund the minimal solution and allow us to prototype the next level. The next level has the data access, so common data access policies. But we did make some significant achievements. So one of the things that we got agreement on, and I would say this was agreement between the partners, not necessarily the funding bodies, that we would use a structure or a metadata structure that was developed by ITER, called the Interface Data Structure IDS. And we were able to get ITER to put in data site metadata. Now, the reason we wanted to do that is not because we intend initially to make our data harvestable by B2Find or OpenAir, but we have the possibility of doing it in the future. Those sites are now capable of giving access to the Fusion community through a common data API. And this is a massive, massive change for everybody, because now they don't need to learn the different access methods. We have a single access mechanism. However, I would say that that is, again, a European thing. The US are doing something completely different. And they have the same goals as this project, but they don't believe that the IDS structure as defined by ITER is a good solution. However, it is the only solution. A number of recommendations came out. So at the moment, data is, apart from the UK, which has a data license, I'm not saying it's a open data license, but they have a custom-built data license. We have managed to get an agreement from the legal teams from all the representatives that if we make our data open, we can release it under CC BY and CSA, so with a non-commercial rider. Now, we had a lot of pushback from IRA-Forum because everybody in IRA-Forum has either got CC BY or CC BY SA. The non-commercial rider is seen as really important in terms of national funding. So Eurofusion only funds 50% of the operations of the tokamak. The other 50% comes from national bodies. And historically, the problem with making even the the Horizon-funded data open is nobody's ever historically recorded which experiments were done for Eurofusion and which were done for national. So we can't do that. as I said, we've got an agreement to use the interface data structure, and particularly the summary IDS, the fair IDS, and the machine IDS as the basis for a metadata model. So that should allow common searchability across all the devices. We also made a recommendation on the standard provenance model to use. Now, provenance is a big problem because historically it's not been captured, and trying to retrofit provenance into an operational system is hard. And it's appreciated that it's hard, so the idea is to build it up slowly. And again, this goes back to the funding model. Blueprint architecture for full implementation with phased cost model was, as I said, a major outcome. You notice that I have made very little mention of the B2 services here, apart from saying that, yes, we did some experiments early on, it wasn't suitable for experimental, but it might be useful for simulation. Fusion also doesn't just cover operations. So we've got to deal with the engineering side, starting right at the beginning, right through to end of life. So tokamak is supposed to develop clean energy, but actually there's a bunch of low level and intermediate and some intermediate level waste that comes out of it. So we have to manage that. And that is another effective data management problem. And that's something that I don't think any of the infrastructure projects are really tackling. Something like how you manage the data from, for instance, the first concept of CERN right through to the end of life of CERN, because there are different data management aspects across that. And we're starting to look at that internally. So we're trying to integrate the engineering solution into our open data repository. It's not as easy as it sounds because the engineers have very different ways of working to the researchers. I would say it's even worse than working across different communities. It's really, really different. But that's one of the things that we're looking at within UKAEA. Current state, you can see it there. We're still interested in making services available through EOSC, but it's still subject to discussion. In fact, based on the talk from the Commissioner this morning, I actually sent an email to some of my colleagues saying, would it or would it not be a good idea to put the data access client as an EOSC service to allow external users to access data that is open? So that's a discussion I'm going to have when I get back. In terms of computing, we spend a lot of time on the EGI services, and we've come to the conclusion that in the most part, they are at best of marginal use. We should be looking more at EuroHPC, and I'm really glad to see that EUDAT and EuroHPC are collaborating closely, because I see that as being one of the keys, particularly for the simulation and modeling exercises that we do. So we have a lot of large-scale users who are working at the petascale already, and that, Antti is telling me, is all the time I have. Thank you very much.
So, hi all. I'm Tommi Suminen from CSC, and I coordinate the FairCore for EOSC project that has just started this June. Now, Sarah was talking earlier about the SRIA. The SRIA has set as the priorities for EOSC the generation of a web of fair data and a minimal viable EOSC by 27. Challenges that were, or gaps that were identified in the SRIA was a need to work on identifiers, on metadata and ontologies, on interoperability, and research software. Now, we are a 10 million euro research and innovation action. What that means is that we will focus on our efforts on concrete service development. And we have some case studies on board to kind of have proof of concept for our services and to ping them off of the community needs. But the bulk of our efforts go to concrete service development. Now, this is where I plan to focus my 7 minutes on. We will develop 9
new EOSC core components, new services. The EOSC PID graph led by DataSite is the development of the technology of linking different research outputs to each other by utilizing their persistent identifiers. Now, the EOSC Research Discovery Graph is the open air effort to actually take this kind of a graph of interconnected scientific outputs and organizations, actors, and create ways to discover information within this graph of information by, for example, generating or creating a human language search to search graph data. They will create subgraphs or capacity to define your own subgraphs for specific communities or specific regions. Then we at CSC are responsible for developing the metadata schema and crosswalk registry. So this is a service where you can deposit your metadata schemas and you can create crosswalks between different metadata schemas. The idea is that you can either register existing ones, or then you can use that to host your schemas. Then it will offer the capacity to visually create crosswalks between these schemas, potentially operationalize these so that you can actually create conversions from a metadata schema, data in a metadata schema to a different one. Whether this will be accomplished by you actually asking the service that, okay, I have data in this schema, can you give me the crosswalk that maps it to a different schema? That is probably the first way to go. And then potentially you can build a service on top of that, which actually then does the metadata conversion from schema to schema. We will try to, for the different disciplines, identify central schemas, such as the serif format for the research information. Then we can map all other schemas to the central schema, and that allows us then to utilize the central schema in a star fashion to kind of go from any of our mapped schemas to the central schema, and from the central schema to any of the other ones, giving us a kind of a universal metadata translation capacity. Then closely affiliated to this is the EOSC data type registry. Now, this is allowing you to define data types in such a way that they have a semantic association relationships. So data type can be specialization of another data type, and it gives them identifiers, so they become linked data items on their own, and allows you to refer to them from linked data. Then some of them will also offer the potential to express conversions between data types, such as how to go from Celsius to Kelvin, or the potential to then actually operationalize data type conversions as well. Sorry, suggest this. All right. And then we have the EOSC PID meta resolver, which is incorporates also work on harmonizing the kernel metadata for different bit schemes. And the meta resolver is intended to be a single point where you can put any type of a PID, and it will resolve to the location where the actual data sets lie. On this one, we have Sven Binger from GDVG, who will be responsible for the data type registry and the PID meta resolver. Then the EOSC compliance assessment toolkit, or I should say the EOSC PID policy compliance assessment toolkit, first tries to quantify the EOSC PID policy with metrics on how can you measure compliance to this PID policy, and then try to operationalize those by generating a toolkit that can actually then do the evaluation of a service for you. We will, or the Australian Research Data Council has developed the RAID identifier type, which is the research activity identifier. So we plan to roll this out for Europe and for EOSC by creating our own instance here. And this is a PID type that is essentially a handle-based PID, and it is a big metadata envelope that encapsulates connections of a specific research activity to, for example, researchers, infrastructures, to data sets, to publications, anything that, and the funding decisions relating to a specific research activity. And we plan to also utilize this within EOSC as a way to formalize when a researcher requests access to specific resources or data sets, then this can become a PIDed activity that we can then incorporate further into the research discovery graph. Then we have Software Heritage, who works on collecting the source code for different research software. They will develop APIs and connectors to interface with even further archives around the world for extracting metadata and the source code on research software. And then we will create a mirror of all this data in, for EOSC as the Software Heritage mirror. It's, that allows us to actually bring in the research source code again as a part of the research discovery graph or the PID graph, which means it becomes another type of a research object that we can connect and discover better. So we have 5 case studies with which we showcase these developed components, and that is the climate change case study led by DKRZ. The European integration of national level services, that's led by CSC. So this takes a national CRIS system, maps the information model to SERIF, for example, and then can map that, for example, to OpenAir to allow for national to European integration data flows. The mathematics, which also touches a lot on software. So the mathematics communities have very well-established repositories of software and their publication information, and we will try to help them connect to the OpenAir for harvesting and getting their software into this kind of discoverability sphere. Then we have UDOT, the service providers and research data management communities, bringing in the research management side into use these services that we develop. And then finally, the social sciences and humanities are represented by Clarin. So as we do a lot of technical development work, we have to try to interface with the existing architecture of services that there is in the EOSC sphere. So we have a so-called technical bridging team that tries to discuss with the EOSC Association, with the different EOSC projects and the task forces, the EOSC Future project to try to harmonize the activities that we are doing and make sure that they are aware of what we are doing and that our activities integrate in the best possible manner into this existing framework. And with that, I would like you to ask if you are interested, or I would like to ask you if you're interested to come and listen to more about our case studies. Heinrich will talk about this tomorrow. And we will be present in the Research Data Exhibition and Networking Open Session today at 4. So if you're interested to find out more about the services we're developing, then come talk to us. There's a link to, inspired by Antti, there's a link to a couple of videos where we're talking about this. So you can go on YouTube to browse our luxurious content. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much. Hello to all of you. I'm Stefan Hachinger, and I'm leading the Research Data Management team in the Research Department of Leibniz Supercomputing Center. And here I'm going to report on a collaboration with also IT4I colleagues who are sitting here in the back, Jan Martinovic and Vit, to construct a platform for workflows with data management, with integrated data management, which is based in this case then on a UDOT. So we were very happy to integrate with the UDOT in this context, and you will see in a while what that's all about. So Lexis is for large-scale execution for industry and society. It means we want to facilitate a platform where people can conveniently execute cloud and HPC-based workflows, so cross workflows across systems using all these kind of technologies. And as such, we aimed with this platform also to build an alternative, and in particular for workflow-centric customers, to the commercial platforms such as AWS, Azure, Baidu, and whatever, and to integrate all the services that are around in the European landscape and in our supercomputing centers to provide an easy, coherent, and convergent approach to cloud and HPC computing, solve difficulties which arise from the split between private and public. So we had a few also commercial companies as a use cases in this project in order to try out what we can do with them and how can we help them. Yeah, so we take together data centers, services, research, cloud computing, and some software stacks to build this platform, and how that platform in the end of the Lexis project, which went from 2019 to 2021, looked that you will see in the next slide. Oh, did I actually display this slide here? So this was what you were supposed to see while I was talking. Next one will be, I'm not familiar with this laptop. Okay, now it's all right. So this is the platform as it looked in the end of the project. You see that we have displayed here the two supercomputing centers. We had also the iCheck inside. We are also aiming at expanding the platform now in the future because we are now in the sustainability phase. So we have various approaches to make this sustainable, including also the usage in new projects. Here as an example, you see these two centers which formed the early core of the project, the IT4I in Ostrava in Czech Republic and the LRZ where I'm from. And we connected these centers not only with the cross system workflows for computing. So we had an adapter by which the workflows can access all these computing systems that you see here, HPC and cloud infrastructures, but also with a distributed data infrastructure based on B2Safe and B2Handle PIDs. So that then the orchestration of the workflow can also move the data around where the next processing step takes place. Yeah, for example, you begin at the Czech Republic, then you move the data transparently to the LRC and have the next processing step there. And that's all orchestrated within this platform. And you will see soon that we have a few automation components that we had to add to the B2Safe or to the data infrastructure as such in order to expand it to make it addressable by these workflows. Oh, now I'm again in the Zoom modus. Yeah, but I will get to learn to it. So it's Federation of European Computing Centers. As I said, yeah, we have this unified data management orchestration based on York and Tosca. Tosca is, I think, now very common language for orchestration, and we had to extend it in HPC direction. And most of all, we offer single sign-on. Yeah, we had to offer single sign-on. We did it in this case based on the key cloak. And it should be user-friendly, yeah, so that people can use it. And what can be run on this platform? I have just one example for you, which is not directly from the Lexis, but was very similar to one of our use cases, namely the WP7 use case on weather and climate. So often you find these scientific or also company workflows beginning with a download of some input data, then you move this data to some storage, you process it, pre-process it typically on some flexible cloud machine, and then you run your supercomputing on this data. And that's, for example, very typical. Of course, there are also workflows with many other steps. Then you have to download results again and post-process them. And in the end, you get, for example, out of an initial weather data, you get a flash flood prediction. Now, this workflows usually is executed like 10,000 times, okay? And that's where we wanted to help actually the companies and the scientists to automate such things and integrate it with a fair data management on the other hand. And with this, I come to distributed data infrastructure of Lexis. This is the work package which I led in this project. It began with putting up some IROT servers. Here first I display the LRZ one. So on the one hand, we had IROT servers, and we've thought of some mechanism to stage data to HPC and cloud systems. And these IROD servers, of course, use a backend storage, and they're the basis for then putting the B2Safe on top of that IRODs, right? So in the IT4I, we have similar setup with another backend storage, in this case Ceph, but that's not so important because the IRODs works as a middleware on top of it. And there, with staging, replication, and mutual access, we get the B2Safe and the B2Handle into the game to identify the data sets uniquely and do also automatic replication. And as I already indicated, to integrate this, however, with a platform and with orchestrator and with the surface, you need some APIs on top of it. And that was also a major part of our development in the Lexis distributed data infrastructure, to have a data staging API, which kind of queues data staging requests. And you can say like, yeah, I want this data stage, please, from the LRZ cloud into the distributed data infrastructure and then to the HPC system in the IT4I. And then it queues that and works on that. The whole ecosystem is quite rich. It has been a big project. So we had Portal with user-friendly interface, monitoring system, the AAI, which I already mentioned, and also a billing system when the platform is envisaged for commercial usage. So on top of the B2Safe, what we added, a few details before I come to the more philosophic aspects, few technical details. On the one hand, we of course had to think of a structure for our data, and that's not, I think, inherent in itself in the B2Safe or IRODS approach, because you can design it to your liking. So we constructed a structure where basically every project has some storage under some certain project hash name, and then under dataset UIDs, and also each user has also some home storage on it, by the way, just to structure it. And that's a major problem, which is actually not addressed by a common policy, probably also because everyone wants to leave the freedom to the actual user. Then on the other hand, we had to structure the metadata, of course. And for that, we use a kind of data site-like scheme, which you can see here on the right lower corner. So we have resource type, we have creator, contributor, publisher, all those that you might know, so that we could envisage also give DOIs, but we have PIDs already with B2Handle, of course. So what are the gaps that we solved with this platform, more or less, in a Lexis-specific ways, of course, somehow? Yeah, I have to say. So on the one hand, we had to connect a distributed data infrastructure, of course, to this cloud and HPC storage systems to have these convergent workflows. We did a metadata scheme, and also we obliged actually the scientists and helped them to annotate it. And that is often a problem because scientists' tradition, as we also heard in the first talks, is often a very different, and very like diverging among one and another discipline. Then we used the B2Share and the B2Safe and B2Handle. Here's actually a mistake, to do the transnational data sharing and PIDs. And what we see is actually that we also had to add a few components like OpenID Connect authentication, REST APIs, and so on, to bring this research data management together with a state-of-the-art IT standards. Then also, of course, there is different policies of the companies involved and of the universities involved and so on. We had also NDAs and all that. So this is for sure a gap that we also try to close by, for example, providing encryption and by providing access control as opposed to very absolutely free sharing. So probably you have to consider both. So in the end, we hope we delivered this access to big data, supercomputing, cloud made easy, and are going to continue. And I'm going to close with a few comments on observed general gaps. So often, actually, the user behavior is a bit different from what you intend with your data management lifecycle policies. For example, deletion and archival, we had the experience. Some user wanted to delete data, but it was replicated. And in the end, there was the replica without the regional data, and that made a big problem. Well, these are the kind of a bit iffy details of that. Then for warm data systems, and in particular in the HPC world, we see a big different culture to the FAIR standards. And I think that's something to bridge. And I think something also the EU that tries to bridge with example B2Stage. We have diverging metadata standards, we have a lot of PID assignment policies, and we have this missing crosstalk, which all doesn't make this easier. Yeah? And I think in practice, we will have to deal a lot with warm data systems and somehow integrate this with the idea of a static research data product. And in the end, we have also always the discussion, what should be a data set? Many files inside, no files inside, compressed, not compressed. Yeah, these are like general observations. And with this, I want to close and thank you. And we have booth for further details this afternoon.
I hope you can hear me, even if some of you can't see me. I am too short. So thanks for the invite, and I'm sorry if I will rush a bit, because 7 minutes are not a lot for tackle all the challenge of RDM, and probably we don't have so many solutions at the moment because of the fragmentation that was presented today. So today I will present more the catalog of service that OpenAIRE has in a new project that is called OpenAIRE Nexus. If you go to the QR code, you will see our new catalog. One of the challenges that we are focusing on in this moment is more the interoperability that we would like to tackle between our service, but also with the service in the IOSC. We have FAIR and machine actionable data management plan tools called Argos, but this is not the only service that we have that is compliant with the FAIR principles. We have several tools that support the research life cycle. So OpenAIRE service in a nutshell are tracking open science, monitoring open science, and discovery open science. So these are the three main pillars in which our service are focusing. In particular, because the challenge that we are tackling in this case are the reproducibility, sorry for my accent, and the transparency of tracking all the outcomes that are from science, and also linking them with the related context. What we mean with context, we mean that we don't want just to focusing on the data or the database itself, but we want to have the enlarged framework on when these data are produced, for which kind of reason, and having an enrichment of the metadata. Of course, what is coming from the framework of the European Commission, and also from the framework on the policy side, is that we need to monitor the open science that is performed at the research level. So not only for the research assessment of researchers, but also at the institute level and more globally. Monitoring is one also of our main pillars in OpenAIRE, and what we are providing is the accessibility of the data. We did this kind of exercise to try to link all the services that we have in OpenAIRE Nexus with the research life cycle. The research life cycle is huge. So one of the classification is actually this one, that is focusing on the discovery, the process and analyze data, the publishing the data, the assessment, the outreach, the data management, the interoperability, the support, and training. We have several services in OpenAIRE. We group them in the publishing, monitoring, and discovery. And all of them are inside the OpenAIRE research graph. Most of you are already graph because it's containing all the data sources that we can harvest. But we have also another service that is called OpenAIRE Provide, which by entering to this software, to this dashboard actually, you can see the enrichment and the update of all the data that are inside the research graph. You can control from your repository, and you can see if there is any error at what time it happened. This is OpenAIRE Provide, and this is one of the entrants of the EOSC data source. And what is basically feeding the research graph. On the other side, there are also other services that are directly open to the use of researchers, as such Zenodo that everybody knows, I think. Amnesia that is helping to the anonymization of the data. Argos is our data management plan tool. And Epscience is instead a third-party service that is basically a layout for open access Diamond journals. Other services that we have are more focusing on monitoring, so all the kind of accounting that we can have for data, linking also to citations, to the funded numbers or codes. We also have tools that are monitoring the ABC of the journals, that are counting the downloads and the usage of the data, and also tools that are focusing on a bigger monitoring from the funder side, from the institution side, or even for the research initiatives. Research initiatives can be even clusters or group of researchers, or even University Alliance or citizen science. The discovery is the part of the research graph that is visible to everyone. And this is happening in our service that is called Explore. Soon, EOSC will have its own Explore service. So you can even access from EOSC directly. And we also do customized gateway for research initiatives or groups of researchers to have their own clean data that at some point can be also used from other softwares. And this is the case of OpenAIRE Connect. So how we are connected to the EOSC core. As I said before, Provide is a dashboard that is very useful for harvesting and control the data sources. So most of the repository manager and also CRIS manager can enter to the EOSC core through Provide and can control the data sources, can control the updates, the enrichment, the deduplication of the data, and the cleaning of the data. So this is something that is happening in Provide. And also, of course, the validation. It's now the OpenAIRE guidelines have their own life. They are adopted everywhere, also in South America or globally in general. This kind of the resources are inside the EOSC resource catalog, so it's not just a catalog that we have in OpenAIRE. And it's also possible to have a counting system to search inside the EOSC resource catalog. We also have a research infrastructure in Open Science for publishing or connecting other communities that are inside EOSC. Moreover, all these kind of the resources can show the impact that open science has in the research. And I think I finished on time.
Thank you.
Thank you.